All right, it's Q&A time. Thanks for your questions. Let's see what we got. Just going to keep scrolling down the list. Ethan Fuller 321 is going to kick us off today by asking, do you see the fullback position ever making a comeback? A little bit, yes. Because teams will like a guy that provides some versatility, kind of like tight end H-back type of stuff. Some teams, as the league starts to become even more about the passing game, then some teams are going to run counterculture. As a result, they're going to implement more of a power running game, which will allow the fullback to come into play, especially the fullback that has some ability to carry the ball, some ability to block, some ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. I think there will always be a place for the fullback, and just like with anything else in the NFL, you're going to go through cycles and so on and so forth, even though I would agree that we're never going to fully go back to the old way of doing things of running the ball a lot more. I still feel like you'll see some continued implementation usage of the fullback. Full comeback, probably not, but I could expect more teams to value it a little bit more in the years to come. Mags, Colts, and Packers fan. I don't know how the hell you could be a fan of both, but whatever. Other than Steve Sable, who are your top 5 players that currently aren't in the Hall of Fame but should be? Thank you for calling out Steve Sable because he is most obviously numero uno in my book in terms of guys that should be in that are not. In terms of those that are not in that should be, I'm trying to go through my mind and think about who is not in. I think of Johnny Robinson of the Kansas City Chiefs. He was a top flight safety during his time. I think he made like 8 or 9 Pro Bowls, something like that, if you include AFL All-Star games and NFL Pro Bowls. He definitely should be in. Tommy Nobis, the first grade Atlanta Falcon. I think he should be in. Ken Anderson, former quarterback of the Cincinnati Bengals, led him to a Super Bowl back in the day. I think he's a glaring omission of somebody that should be in that is not. As a Bears fan, I think of somebody like a Joe Fortunato is somebody that should be in the Hall of Fame. There's a number of guys. At the moment, I'm not able to recall a whole bunch of them. Samuel Kerr. Should the Rams pay Jared Goff top dollar when he's a free agent or draft another quarterback and see if McVay can coach him up? They could probably get a lot of picks for Goff if they traded him, and they could use that money on other positions. Cheap QB is a cheat code in the NFL cap era. It most certainly is. And as crazy as it might be to a lot of people to hear you suggest that, which on the surface it appears absolutely nuts. We're told so often that having the franchise quarterback is the way you must have one in order to be a real deal championship contending team. And by and large, that is absolutely true. But is there something to be said about in order to stay a contender, you don't want to overinflate the amount of cap money that you tie into one position, one player, which is the quarterback position? I do feel like it is a valid question to ask. And I do feel like it is one that teams are going to have to reconcile in the years to come. Because it's one thing to find that quarterback, but if you do so many things to where you spend so much on the quarterback and a couple of other stars that you can't assemble a roster that's well-rounded around that quarterback, then it's not going to matter. Then you're just the Green Bay Packers. You've got your quarterback, and you don't have a whole lot of shit around him. I think it's something I might even do a video about some point because it is a more interesting conversation the more you think about it. Cody Martin, what are the chances the Chargers make it to the Super Bowl? And if they do, what are the chances they win? They have a chance to be a Super Bowl team. They've got balance. They've got a franchise quarterback. They've got talent on both sides of the ball. They can get after opposing teams' quarterbacks. I like their chances. I don't know that they're the favorites necessarily in the AFC, but I don't know that they're not either. And if they got there, they got as good a shot as anybody to win it. Keys 10, agree or disagree, this has been one of the most entertaining NFL seasons in the past few years. Selfishly, from a Bears fan standpoint, I would agree. The Bears have been good this year. I've cared a lot more about the NFL. I don't disagree with you. Just pros win. Will the Bears be rusty after missing the playoffs for so long? I don't know that missing the playoffs has anything to do with being rusty. Will there be some potential concerns because they lack a lot of playoff experience? Perhaps. But perhaps it won't matter Perhaps they will get to the playoffs and they will play above themselves because they won't know about the pressure of the playoffs. Drake Maddox 28. What does your top 5 look like in a redraft of this year's class? Your top 5 look like in a redraft of this year's class. So it's really hard to do a redraft when their rookie season's not even over. Like if you're the Browns, are you taking anybody other than Baker at number 1 at this point? No, not at this point. Number 2, you're the Giants. You took Saquon Barkley. You're probably not taking that back. The Jets with Darnold, it's too early to tell, so you're not walking that back. Then you've got Denzel Ward to the Browns. I'm sure the Browns are happy with him, even though I personally still would have taken Bradley Chubb, but the Broncos most certainly aren't going to regret taking Bradley Chubb at 5. I mean, now granted, if you want me to do a true redraft based off of the best players out of this class, then none of the quarterbacks are in the top 5. It's guys like Quentin Nelson and Will Hernandez. It's Derwin James. It's Saquon Barkley. It's Bradley Chubb. Those are probably the top 5 in some configuration or order. But it's too early to sit there and do a redraft. Furthermore, to me, there's nothing indicating that any of those top 5 guys have been busts in any way to where a team would want to rethink their draft strategy. Yakum Flavor, which QB draft class has been more disappointing, 2014 or 2015? I think when you look at it, 2015 a little bit. 2014 is definitely disappointing, but I think 2015, because you had Winston and Mariota, and they were kind of both supposed to be the guys, and neither one of them, I think, has really truly proven to be that type of dude. Lucas Feuerstein, are the Chargers the best team in the AFC? If they're not the best, you'll be hard-pressed to tell me of 2 that are better at this point. Peter Jedra, should the Todd Bowles be fired and why? The Jets are 4-10. You haven't seen a lot of development out of Sam Darnold. The team stinks. It is time for a change. And then who is your most positive and negative surprise Chicago Bear? Most positive and negative surprise Chicago Bear. The most positive surprise is that Ryan Pace pulled off the trade for Khalil Mack. That's by far the most positive. The most negative surprise has been Jordan Howard and the lack of consistent utilization of him in the running game and the lack of success that he's had in the running game. That's been the most disappointing negative surprise, the most concerning negative surprise. Joseph Humphrey, which team in the AFC right now would you most enjoy seeing the Bears beat in the Super Bowl? The New England Patriots. Easily. We're going to have Super Bowl 20 flashbacks, bitches. That would be the team. If you want to beat anybody, you want to beat the gold standard, don't you? That's who I would want to beat. Courtney Centimore. The better defense, the 2006 Chicago Bears or the Bears of now? I think the 06 Bears were better. You had Tommy Harris, you had Urlacher and Briggs, you had Mike Brown, Peanut Tillman. I'll take that defense, especially when you throw in the special teams. You're talking about Brad Maynard, the punter, great directional, accurate punter. And then, of course, when you talk about defense, you got to factor in the return game of Devin Hester, arguably the best returner to ever do it. So when you're looking at the entirety of it, I would definitely go with the 06 Bears. And I don't know if it's that close. Like this Bears defense this year is pretty good, but that defense in 06 was much better. Elliot Pytoski, would you rather start a franchise with Drew Brees or Russell Wilson young? Meaning that when they were young, which one would you rather have? Drew Brees. Better thrower of the football. Drew Brees. Josh JS360. How much longer until you or the Bears lose patience with waiting for Trubisky to be a good quarterback? It's at least another year, especially because the team is enjoying success this year. So it's at least another year before you really start to get truly concerned. As tough as it is to sit there and be patient, it is still important to have some patience. That doesn't mean ball wash like a lot of these Marcus Bear fans do with Trubisky. They just ball wash the hell out of it. It's ludicrous and it's crazy. Stop insulting your own intelligence and mine. Please give it up. That said, still way too early to flat out call him a bust because you've seen enough of the both positive and the negative to be uncertain. So it's at least until the end of year 3 before I can really start to formulate a true judgment. I have my concerns or reservations now, yes, especially in the grander scheme of things when you see what Patrick Mahomes is doing. Yeah, just saying. Latrell Hassel. How legit is Phillip Rivers this year? About as legit as he's been most years over the past decade plus. He's a future Hall of Fame dude. Who should be surprised? Strip Sack Mac, a quick Drew Lock comparison. Quick Drew Lock comparison. There might be some elements of a Josh Allen in there. Some elements of a Connor Cook in there. Chet Mary Laser. So with 3 picks in the first 2 rounds, should Houston go 2 offensive linemen and 1 corner or 2 corners and 1 offensive lineman? When in doubt, default to this. Who is the face of your franchise now? It is Deshaun Watson. You go with the 2 offensive linemen. Nicholas Mellott. Are Rivers and Anthony Lynn in the conversation for MVP and Coach of the Year, respectively? I think Rivers now, as the season's playing along, probably gets a little more MVP conversation. Anthony Lynn deserves some love for Coach of the Year, but I'm sorry, even for me. Like, I know the national media is probably going to be very hip on Matt Nagy, especially if the Bears win that division, But I look at pure coaching jobs. I look at Pete Carroll in Seattle, and I look like Frank Reich in Indianapolis, and I say those are vastly inferior rosters to the Bears, and they're coaching them above their potential, where you feel like Matt Nagy is more coaching them to their potential. That's the difference. Matt Nagy, overall, good job with some bad decisions. Pete Carroll, Frank Reich, much better in terms of what they have to work with and what they've gotten done. Alex Seida, do you see the Bears acquiring another QB through the draft, trade, or free agency? Probably in one of those. I'm not sure which avenue they would go in the offseason, but probably one of those. Matt Hill, 145, as a Raiders fan, can you give me some hope? Sure. That 9 more years isn't that long if you really think about it. Anyways, Hot Rod, do you think the Jaguars will draft a quarterback in 2019, or will they go after an accomplished veteran like Eli or Joe Flacco? After drafting a quarterback in Bortles and he ultimately failed and flopped, which just surprised absolutely no one, and once you fire David Caldwell for being a moron, for giving Blake Bortles a bunch of money and not trading for Bridgewater or doing something else to improve the competition at the quarterback position, I would think they'll go after somebody like a Flacco or Eli, personally. I don't know that they're going to want to go back down the draft path, even though they should. Matthias Biebermeyer. Would you play most of your starters if you were the Bears coach in Week 17 against the Vikings if the Bears had no chance at a first-round bye, but this would be an all-or-nothing game for the Vikings? They win and they're in. Yes. Yes. Because not only would I want the joy of kicking the Vikings' ass one more time and keeping them the fuck out of the playoffs, I also don't want to sit there and rest my guys too much to the point where you get rusty for that following week. You know, it's the rest and rust kind of conversation. I think you got to play the guys. Now you can be sensible. If the Vikings went out to a big league early because they're playing for everything, the Bears really aren't playing for much, then you get to a point in time that maybe you do want to prevent injury and you do pull your starters, but you got to play them. You got to play them. You've got to play your starters. That's the way I look at it. And if an injury happens, an injury happens. But an injury could be just as likely to happen in fucking practice in a walk-around or a walkthrough. So can't coach with fear. Luke Perez. How concerned should Eagles fans be with the team's medical staff, seeing as it's another in a long list of seemingly misdiagnosed players? That's really concerning. Yes, you should be. Kevin Smith. Should the Cowboys pay Dak like a top-tier quarterback? Fuck no. No reason to do it now. Wait until next year. Why in the hell would you do it now? Does Derwin James win Defensive Rookie of the Year? He might, but it also could be Darius Leonard of the Colts. I still think Bradley Chubb should be thrown into that mix too, but Derwin James as a rookie, along with Leonard, probably has the most notoriety on the defensive side of the ball, so it'll be one of those two guys. Shotgun and Sevs. Do you think the only exception to the Jets going offense is if Nick Bosa is there or offense no matter what? It better goddamn be offense no matter what. Enough of the first-round picks on defensive side of the ball. No, you can pass on that dude. You can pass on that dude. We got a bunch of other questions that I'm not going to be able to have time to answer. So thanks to you guys. I'll answer those on Twitter. I'll see you later. I appreciate the questions. We'll do it again soon.